Welcome to a special edition of Let's Talk Spokane. I think we're all aware of the tragic and terrible circumstances of last Sunday, and I felt, in reaching out in the community, others felt that it was a time maybe to sit down and have a discussion about terrorism, both domestic and international and so forth. And so I'm real pleased today to have a friend of mine, Lance Kissler. I reached out to him yesterday and said, can we schedule something on a Tuesday or a Wednesday? And here it is, Tuesday the next day. Wow. So some folks do their work pretty quick, and Lance, I appreciate it. I've asked Lance, who wears a lot of hats in this community, very active in this community, very pro Spokane and Inland Northwest, I have to say that, to invite some friends and also to be a co-host. And as you know from watching or listening to any of our programs, these are unrehearsed, unscripted, and they're conversations, not interviews. And so I'm asking all of our guests as we go through this today to feel free to speak up and to say what's on your mind. My first thought is, before I kind of turn it over to Lance a little bit, is we've been watching what's been going on in the world, and ISIS and other terrorism. And some of these groups, many of these radical groups, go after certain groups. My feeling is that an attack on any American citizen is an attack on us as a nation. And so from that point of view, we hope to have a lively and a good conversation today. And so, Lance, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Kent. And thanks for having everybody join us as well.
Absolutely. On short notice, too.
On short notice.
I mean, really, literally about 12 or 20 hours to say, so thank you for coming, first of all. We appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that I want to...
what hat are you wearing today?
The hat that I'm wearing today is... there's an organization called the Inland Northwest Business Alliance, and Marvo is our general manager, has been for... I don't know how many years now, but has been involved with the organization since the beginning of time. So I currently serve as the board chair and have been involved for about 4 or 5 years now with the organization. And Marvo does a great job of keeping us moving forward. And our goal is to really advocate for the LGBT and ally community from the business perspective, the business side of things. And so our vision is that we have this very economically robust region, and part of that is looking at all of the communities that live in this region, including the different populations. So,
and many of them, I would guess, are in that vulnerable business state of being small business, which, as we all know,
most of our members are small businesses.
It's a lot of trust and a lot of, am I going to make it through the year financially?
Yes, and then in particular, that's serving a community that has not always been welcomed in businesses, has not always felt safe having people come to their home to do plumbing, to do landscaping, right, any of that kind of stuff. And so we really serve as a forum for connecting the community, the LGBT community, with businesses that are both LGBT owned as well as allied, so welcoming, friendly, open, so that they have a place that they can go to. But that's just one thing. That's just one organization that's doing one thing in the community. We have several others that are here with us today, and I'd like to invite them to share a little bit about what they do and how they support the community. So,
Michael, why don't we start with you?
Hi, my name is Michael Jepson. I'm the chair of Out Spokane. We're the organization that puts on Spokane's annual Pride Parade and Rainbow Festival.
So you went from a great event, we went to a 180-degree day the next day, didn't you?
We literally an hour before the senseless tragedy started, we were having fireworks for the 25th Pride in Spokane. And I went to bed feeling really good about the world.
Yeah.
And first thing, wake up the next morning, and we're planning a vigil.
Yeah.
We're planning a vigil and to mourn, to celebrate the lives lost.
Look, let me ask a question because, and we'll get to everybody here, but you went from that high
Right.
of good things, and I'm guessing not just the gay and lesbian and community and so forth, but the community coming out, right?
You know, it's funny you should ask that, Kent. Right before the parade started, the first person I came out to 35 years ago as a teenager in the Spokane Valley came up to me and gave me a hug, and she said, "I know how busy you are, but I just had to say how happy I am to be here."
Nice.
And her one of her stepsons was one of the police officers guarding Pride, and yes, it was allies, and so many of the strides we have made in my adult life would not have happened if it weren't for allies.
Right, right. What then, since Sunday, have you seen?
A lot of people have reached out, and I'm assuming I'm not the only one at the table who's had this happen. I'm a fairly public face for the community, and a lot of people have reached out to me seeking solace, seeking an understanding, expressing fear, expressing anger. Excuse me. And, you know, and I just keep saying that love will prevail. We had over 1,000 people at the vigil Sunday night.
Wow.
I was expecting a couple of dozen, to be completely honest with you.
Right.
And Jan and I were up at the steps of the clock tower looking at the people who were coming from the Gondola Meadows where we started the event, and we were the clock tower meadow was full, and we looked up across the river, and there were people going past the carousel still, carrying candles and just trying to make sense of this.
Yeah.
That was a sight. I was probably about halfway in that procession, and I looked back and saw back to the carousel, and just I turned to the friend that I was with and said, "Wow, that is a line."
Yeah.
On a Sunday night in Spokane.
And on Sunday night in Spokane,
Right.
a last minute,
Right.
so to speak.
Right,
And
right.
yet around the world, the vigils around the world are really starting to explode.
Yes.
In the way of the numbers. I mean, I saw on Facebook this morning, 10,000 in London?
London,
Yes.
10,000.
You know, and that's, you know, that's not even here.
Right.
So, you know,
That's across the pond, as my mother's English relatives would say.
you know, in Seattle, they were able to gather over 7,000 people at Cal Anderson Park with
Right.
Seattle's mayor and our governor there, you know, at a vigil, and just across the nation. So it's incredible, the amount. But what I wanted to say about Spokane with the 25th anniversary, I mean, their theme was from silence to celebration, and unfortunately, it was from silence to celebration to mourning.
Right.
So, you know, I think it's really hit our community really hard because we were in such a good high over where we were. The city is decked out in rainbow.
Right.
You know, it's very, very open. This is not the Spokane that we knew even 2 or 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The first Pride, they wore bags over their heads so that
Many people
seen.
wore bags over their heads so they didn't lose jobs or families
right.
or housing.
Right. Good point.
So it's incredible the amount of well, the progress that
how far we've come.
How far we've come.
Yeah.
And yet there's still
A ways to go.
this has reminded us there's such a long way.
And on
Right.
Saturday, I was speaking with a young man that I've met once. He's new to Spokane. And he was telling me on Saturday, he came up and gave me a big hug with 2 of his friends, and he said, you know, this is my first Pride, he said. You know, his first Pride ever. You know, he had never been so free to be out. And he was so happy on Saturday. And he said, it's so cool to see my minister here. And then Sunday at the vigil, he came up to me, and I had just finished closing the vigil in prayer. And he came up and he just sobbed on my shoulder, and he said, I've never had a minister pray for me before.
Wow.
But in 24 hours, I mean, that's what we went from, you know, was his first Pride and being so happy and so relaxed. And then to have to be at this vigil. I mean, it's been a horrible, I don't think boomerang's the right word, but it's just been a horrible
Roller coaster is what I'm
coaster
saying.
ride.
Well, talk about a slap in the face.
Right.
I mean, it couldn't get harder. Really couldn't. Jan Shannon, and you're from?
Westminster United Church of Christ. I'm the assistant pastor there.
Okay. All right. And we have, I'm going to get this wrong, Lucas Leak. Am I saying that right?
You are.
All right. And how do you react to all this? This has got to be,
There's a lot of pain,
yeah.
a lot of pain, a lot of anger. But one thing that I walked around in that crowd, I did not get up on the stage with Jip and with Jan, but I walked around through the crowd and I hugged people and I held people as they cried. The fact that so many people came anyway, we went from silence to pride, but we didn't go back to silence. The people came, they stood there. There was a car that drove across the bridge and yelled obscenities, but we all sat there anyway. And we were hugging each other, and we were out, and we were visible, and that was the beauty to me. And that's what I kept reminding everybody, is that this is a senseless, horrible tragedy, and it's hit us all very, very hard, absolutely. But the fact that we're still here, and we're still coming out all over the world for this vigil shows that we're not going back. We're not going to hide because of this, and that is very, very important.
And that's something that I've seen a lot online, is people talking about how the nightclubs and bars and other venues were a safe haven for many people.
Sanctuary.
A sanctuary. Oftentimes where their homes or their churches or other places may not have been sanctuaries for them because they were not welcomed or accepted. And that it wasn't just for the LGBT community either. I was having a conversation with some friends last night, and several of them shared how as straight female citizens, that's where they felt safe going to dance and be with their friends, because in their minds, the real, creepers were the straight guys who would, hound them at the bars, and they felt much more comfortable in a gay bar or venue. And so taking a look back now, many people are asking, are we safe there? Are we really as safe as we think that we are? And so that's the question that I want to ask of the group is, where do we go from here? How do people feel?
Lance, I've been saying this for years since I've returned to the Alphabet Soup community. I kind of feel sorry for people your age and younger. I remember being a young queer man and that feeling of liberty and exhilaration walking into a gay space. Just knowing I was safe and with friends, and I could dance with my boyfriend, and I could hold hands, and I could camp it up if I felt like it. I remember when I was 21 being at a bar, and there were a bunch of us hanging out, as one does when one's a foolish college student. And we went to
Did you go to WSU?
we were taking pictures, and let's say I was taking a picture of you. Somebody behind there said, "Hey, don't take a picture of me," because they didn't want their picture
sure.
in a gay bar.
Right.
I went to the Gay Christian conference a year ago, January, and there were over 3,000 people. It was at that time the largest conference that they had. And when they give you your name tag, they ask you what color lanyard you want to wear around your neck. And blue means you're okay and you're out, and it's okay if people take your picture. And red means please don't put a picture of me online. And so that does still happen, especially, unfortunately, with the gay Christian community, of which I'm a part as a lesbian. There were pastors there that would be in danger of their job if their boss knew they were at a gay Christian conference. And so
In
it's
2016.
awful that in the Christian community, people have to hide.
So what do we do next? Let's talk about where we go from here. The one question on my mind is how much of what happened on Sunday is part of this terrorism issue that we look at, and how much of it is going after the LGBT community?
I want to clarify a couple of things. The shooter was an American. He was born in New York.
Right.
I don't believe this was terrorism. I believe this was a troubled man with a gun that was designed to kill multiple people as quickly as possible. I've heard, I don't know, I'm trying to learn as little about this man as possible because, quite frankly, I don't want to make him famous in
Exactly.
But I'm told that he was a regular at Pulse. I am told that he had profiles on gay social apps. I think he was a very troubled, deeply flawed human being. I don't view this as terrorism. I view this as hate, fear, and cowardice.
I agree. I agree completely.
And quite frankly, I'm having a dialogue with the police right now about having a public forum about this. And as a man who has sex with men, I am more likely to be injured or killed by a partner in a one-on-one situation than I am in a nightclub. Neighbors had its incident a few years back. Of course, the senseless tragedy at Pulse. I think I was bashed a few years ago here in Spokane. And it's to a point where I don't like to go anywhere unless I've got a Lance or a Marvo or a Jan with me. Strength in numbers.
Right.
But, or Lucas. Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
I never see you out, so. This isn't about terrorism in my mind. I mean, I believe that this was.
You don't believe it is domestic terrorism? That going in and killing 49 people?
I believe this was a lone. He did state his pledge to ISIS.
Right.
But no, I don't believe this was an act of terrorism. I believe this was an act of hate, fear, and cowardice.
I agree completely.
And I think it all depends on that definition of terrorism. I do believe it's an act of domestic terrorism. I mean, take a look at all the other types of domestic terrorism we have,
right,
and it fits right into that same category.
Yeah.
Now,
Oklahoma City,
exactly.
Man with an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, it really all depends, but I think, where do we go from here was your question.
Right.
And where we go from here is to make sure that we're having a dialogue, a very open and serious dialogue, one within our community, but mostly with our legislators, with Congress, with those who are not doing their jobs, who in the way of protecting our citizens by allowing certain types of military-style weapons to be purchased out on the open market.
Well, but the fact is, as a very strong believer of the Second Amendment, those folks, the bad people, whether it be something like this or the local robbery of the 7-Eleven, are going to find their weapons, whatever kind it is.
They are going to find
Yeah.
weapons, but
And
make it harder. Make it harder.
How? How?
I just saw a great post on Facebook that said, what if we made it the same requirements that women have to have before they have an abortion? They have to have a 24-hour waiting period. They have to seek their doctor's advice. They have to get permission from so-and-so. They can still purchase those, but they have to go through some scrutiny to do that. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the solution, but the fact is that if we aren't having some dialogue, and we aren't making those who are leading our country, if we don't hold them accountable, then it's going to continue down this same road. And that's the type of dialogue that I would like to see, not just within the community saying you need to point out those who are slurring and calling out the LGBT community and saying that we're evil, awful people that are trying to go into bathrooms or do this or recruit their children. That's not the dialogue we need. We need some of that, but I think the bigger dialogue is what do we do about the arms and the gun control.
That's definitely one issue that needs to be reevaluated in our society. I totally agree with that. But it's going to take the entire society to come to an agreement for that to even go anywhere. But one thing that is also happening is in the last 6 months, there's been 200 anti-LGBT bills entered in this country. Now that sends a clear message to many, many folks. Whether these pass, whether these are rejected, it doesn't matter. It's sending a clear message that discrimination is okay against the LGBT community when our congressmen, our state senators, our state, House of Representatives are entering bills that are very clearly anti-LGBT.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And that needs to be reevaluated as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dialogue that needs to happen is who is leading our country? I mean, who are passing these bills? And whether it's guns or anti-LGBT legislation. It just is a trickle-down effect. The fact that any gay man in Orlando or here in Spokane cannot donate blood to help what just happened, either in Orlando or any other tragedy that happens in the United States, they cannot donate blood without waiting 12 months since their last sexual experience. Now, why is it that gay men have to wait, gay and bi men, but straight men don't?
Especially when you can test for HIV, and there is absolutely no reason for that to happen. And there's also something called batching, where they can set that blood aside to be used by people that are in the same community.
Right.
It's absolutely ridiculous that they can't give blood.
And so we need to bring things up to date.
Absolutely.
Because 20 years ago with HIV and everything else, it was a different story than it. I mean, we're much smarter today in terms of testing and
So
all
many of
that.
these rules are just based on fear.
35-year-old fear.
Was a
panic
knee-jerk
response.
reaction 35, 20 years ago
Right.
that still continues. It's ridiculous.
How much of this is a mental health issue?
Don't stigmatize the mentally ill.
Yeah.
No, I mean in helping mentally ill, because you look at the homeless issue and so forth, it's 85%.
This guy, this particular shooter, in my opinion, I don't believe it's pertinent. This guy held jobs, was married twice. I mean, let's face it, in the United States, if you told everyone who has been married more than once that they couldn't have a gun, there'd be a lot fewer guns on the streets. But he was, on the surface, I mean, yes, the FBI had investigated him, but he was a tax-paying, job-holding member of society. He was not the scary other any more than
But one of his coworkers quit working with him because he said he was a little nuts. And I wonder if the FBI and other agencies really looked in far enough or to really check him out.
But see, that's the problem, and that's what Marva was trying to talk about, because even though the FBI had interviewed him 3 times and were very concerned about him, Congress just sent down a bill that would have stopped people on the FBI watch list from purchasing guns. And they voted it down. This man would not have been allowed to purchase a gun after 3 FBI interviews if our legislators would just do their jobs.
And, I'm told, I haven't seen the numbers, but I'm told that half of all mass shootings have occurred after the expiration of the assault weapon ban. Again, these weapons are not designed for hunting. These weapons are not designed for self-protection. These are not sporting weapons. These are weapons that are designed to kill. And I believe firmly in the Second Amendment. I grew up with guns. I grew up respecting the guns. I grew up loving guns.
I remember a hunter safety education course that I
Right.
took. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I was horrible at hunting.
But
Yeah.
I still owned a gun and operated it appropriately and safely.
And I'm not
pulled out
saying
a
that-
shotgun when some nice Baptists came to my house one time. I didn't hurt anybody, but, it's a long story.
You sure they weren't like Seventh-day Adventists
Right, yeah.
or something like that?
Back in the day when I used to live way out in the woods, and we
Yeah.
were 25 minutes from any police protection, and a car came up my driveway, turned around 3 times, drove away, came back 15 minutes later. This was not okay. My dogs were going crazy. I picked up our shotgun and stood outside and said, "Can I help you?" And they said, we're from the local Baptist church. And, sorry, but so, there's a place for self-defense. Absolutely, that's but an AR-15 is not self-defense. An AR-15 is meant to kill hundreds of people at one time.
It was not an AR-15.
An automatic rifle is not for self-defense. An automatic rifle is used to kill hundreds of people at one time.
But your question was the mental health question. And
Well, I've just seen so much in the homelessness issue and so forth. You talk with Rob McCann at House of Charities, and he says, Kent, 85% of the folks that you see here or on the street have mental health problems. And I'm not sure we're dealing with that.
I don't
And
think
it's kind of
that's
beyond
a
what
connected
we're-
issue. It's not a connected issue.
I think it's a straw man.
It's another tragedy, but it's a separate tragedy.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I think there's a couple of things that we have to keep in mind is that, one, we may never know his actual motives. That's something that only he truly knows. His family members can make assumptions based upon their interactions with him, their conversations with him, but only he truly knows what his motivations were. We may not know whether or not he was truly mental ill. I mean, is there an official diagnosis out there? Probably not. So there's a lot of assumptions that we can make, and that's where we have to be cautious, is in making those assumptions. What we need to do is have the conversations around how do we move forward from here in a way that engages everyone who needs to be involved, that makes progress, and doesn't just say, oh, we've looked at that, let's move on. Let's not be afraid to open something up, take it apart, and look at it with a new lens. If gun control laws, if mental health issues, if FDA, restrictions on blood donations are all from 5, 10, 15, 20, so many. I just hit the table, which I'm not supposed to do, but I'm trying to make a point.
I was going to slap you.
Things have changed. A lot has changed in society. I saw one person post, and I'm not going to beat the gun control issue to death. I do believe that people should have the right to bear arms, but I did see somebody say that, probably many of those gun control laws and policies were based upon muskets that hardly fired, 100 years ago.
Every 3.5 seconds.
Right. Change has happened. Our society is different, and laws are meant to be able to be updated and reflect upon the times that
reality.
we live on, and the reality that we live in.
Marvo talked about a dialogue, creating a dialogue. Where do we go from here, Lance?
How does that dialogue happen?
Yeah. Where does it happen? What else do we need to do other than... I start to worry sometimes, and here we're doing it today, that we just talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's the same group that talks about it. I don't care if you're talking about poverty or this issue or something else. There's a lot of talk.
I call this the usual suspect syndrome.
Yeah.
Where you see the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Marlo,
and
Lucas.
I've invited you all here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But and I see that in other things that are going on in the community, and I go, okay. Now, that being said, what happened on Saturday was more than the usual suspects.
Right.
You've been able to ignite, if you will, a community to come out and say, we care about everybody. All right. So how do we get that dialogue and so forth to that next level that it does something more than just...
Kent, that's a really excellent question, and
I don't know what the answer is.
I've said this to a few people. I've become complacent. I feel surrounded by love and acceptance. And I mean, we heard the slur shouted down at us from the Washington Street Bridge on Sunday evening. But what really hit me is when I was helping prepare for the parade on Saturday morning, I heard one of the protesters say, if I was given the chance, I would pull the trigger or I would drop a canister into a gas chamber to kill gay people. And I thought, oh gosh, he's really going over the top.
Yeah.
But we hear that all the time on these bathroom bills. And Lucas can speak to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact is that hate is never okay. And
Right.
when our society stops tolerating that type of word, that same group was standing in front of LC High School the day before that yelling at children.
Right.
This cannot be allowed anymore. We need to not just walk by. There was one person in our community that was facing that same group with a mirror that said, "We love you," and holding it so that they could see themselves. That's what our entire society, our entire community after community needs to start doing. I think that will make a big difference right there.
Agreed.
Unfortunately, we have only about 2 more minutes. Let's wrap it up with some of your thoughts as we do this. And I always hate this because we get to a point where we really start talking and we're at the end of the program.
Right.
Okay. And so I hope this is the beginning of a conversation in the community. From my perspective, I'm the old, literally last week, 70-year-old guy. Okay. I come from a different generation than all of you, probably all of you added together. You know, I kid Dave Cotton because he's at the end of the baby boomer and I'm at the beginning. So I'm learning a lot. Okay, I have to get past my prejudices and my life experiences. Okay, one of my best friends was gay. He never said anything to me, but we kind of suspected. And since then, we've had the dialogue and those kinds of things. And so I look at it as, I wish I was as interested in learning back in high school and college as I am now.
Right.
Okay? And you'll all get that way in another 30 or 40 years. But I'm interested in learning. That doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything, okay?
Right.
But if you can tolerate my crazy point of view at times and understand, hopefully I can do the same for you. Is that a start?
The one of the best things that I heard from a friend was she was talking about her uncle and how they would discuss politics, and his stance was you could not engage in political conversation unless you could successfully argue the other side.
Good point. Good
You
point.
need to know just as much about the other perspective as you do about your own.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the first challenges I would throw out there is to, one, educate yourself, invite someone to lunch, someone that you may not have lunch with, someone new, someone different, and just listen. And when you listen with the intent to agree with them.
Okay.
That's very different than
Yeah.
just listening.
Good point.
And then this fall, make tough decisions. If you are going to vote for somebody after you are fully educated, and we're in a democratic society. We can influence how legislation occurs by who we vote for. So that's something to keep
Maybe
in
not in the
mind.
primary process, but
But there are things that we can
I
we can affect change. It may just take small steps to
Yeah.
get there.
okay. Any last words from anybody?
No, I just would really like to say thank you for bringing the dialogue up so quickly, and thank everybody around the table.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, all of
Very
you.
quickly agreed
Yeah,
to do this.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but, I think this is the start of the dialogue.
Well, and one of the things I will say is that we do a number of programs, from Let's Talk Spokane to Business Talks to our live program on Wednesdays at noon. And let's look forward to having all of you back at different times individually, where we don't try to crowd you around a big table and be awkward and all of that, and continue the dialogue and maybe bring others to the table as well, okay? So let's plan to do that. Again, Lance, thank you for, I knew I could kind of count on you. and gosh, I think within minutes you were already working on it yesterday morning. A little surprised it came this fast, but I like that.
Get it done.
Because it is an important issue, and I think you're right. Let's continue the dialogue, and let's continue to bring more people into the dialogue, even if they don't all agree with our particular points of view. And no one is going to agree with all my points.
Right.
I understand that, okay? Except maybe my wife. No, she doesn't. But thank each of you for coming today and for what you did on Saturday. What a great activity. Yeah, all of you, because you were there. You were there. And thank you very much. This has been Let's Talk Spokane. I'm Kent Adams with my co-host Lance Kissler. I didn't say
Yeah,
it, did
you
I?
didn't say it.
There's a joke that I called him Larry one time because I've known Larry Kissler in the community for like 30 years. And I've only known you a couple of years.
I'm set to ruin his reputation. So.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say it the other way around. But anyway, hey, thank you very much. I hope that you have learned something, and I would implore you to continue the dialogue. Thanks for watching.